Okay, so we start with the refuge and bodhicitta and then go into the 3R. When the bell starts and we hear it tolling out the hours, we hear a strike and there's a reverberation, an echoing sound coming out from it. As they start moving into this call to prayer, calling people to the church, the strikes become more consistent and the reverberation starts to seem continuous. And then the strikes seem to be like peaks within this continuous sound. From the Buddhist point of view, when we perform an action invested with the afflictions, with dullness or stupidity, desire, anger, jealousy and pride. These are moments like a strike. They have a beginning, a middle and an end. But they set up a field of reverberations, the subtle traces, the avaranas. And this field of subtle traces becomes a seemingly continuous web within which particular moments are arising. That is one of the reasons that it's very difficult to free ourselves from the complexity of thought, because it's not just a decision in a moment that we're going to stop doing this, but there's a continuing kind of pulsation or arousal or tendency that's there. And it's that subtle movement that we need to be attending to. Sometimes it's compared to a mountain valley where the river is running under the meadow and you can't see it directly, but in the middle of the valley you see that the grass is thicker and more luxuriant, and that indicates that there's a good supply of water underneath. So a lot of the time we don't experience directly the continuity of our impulses. We just have these moments of showing. So when we sit in a meditation practice, it's not just the thoughts and feelings, but it's this aroused expectation that we looked at yesterday, like waiting for future thoughts, attending to past thoughts, because these are the subtle vibrations or pulsations which link to the past, to the present, to the future, and seem to create a seamless web of occurrence. And of course, our experience is seamless. So there's the seamlessness which is imbued with attachment, that is flavored by attachment. And there's the seamlessness which is open. So for example, when we do this recitation of the refuge, we're doing it in this slow, easy way, sound following sound following sound. And although on paper you can see these are separate words, the flow of sound becomes continuous. For example, if you go to the beach, particularly a beach on the North Sea, this is a vast sea, a vast ocean. But you're standing on the beach and you see the waves coming in. And the experience is that there's one wave, then another wave, then another wave, then another wave. And each seems to be something. But if you go further out to sea, and it's a day that's reasonably calm without a heavy wind, you get this swelling on the water. It's a rising and falling, and the wave doesn't break out at all. So this is the sound that we want to make when we're doing the refuge. It's the pulsation which has no interruption. And then you start to see what in Dzogchen they're talking about as hlundrup, the immediate, spontaneous presencing which is continuing. This term that we had in the Heart Sutra, magagpa, unceasing. It's not a ceaselessness which is built on the basis of my attachment and my keeping the whole ego show going, because I need the continuity of myself to feel okay. It's the ceaseless movement of what is there. So when we are chanting, we're just allowing this flow of sound and sound and sound as energy is flowing through space without interruption. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. So when we sit in a meditation, many different kinds of experience arise. Our selectivity says this is a good experience, that's a bad experience. My mind is clear today, it wasn't so clear yesterday. This comparing and contrasting operates to chop up the world into pieces, and then we put them together again. And this work of composition is ceaseless, it's unending, it's the basis of samsara. It's quite tiring and exhausting because we never quite get it right, as if the world is some infinite jigsaw puzzle and bits are always missing, so you get some bit clear and then the kids come and throw it off the table and you're picking the pieces off the carpet. And we're reconstructing our lives again and again. What was described in the Heart Sutra, this fourth skanda, duche, putting together, composition, making our lives, building up the images of who we are. And this involves, of course, involves choices, and it becomes egosyntonic. That's to say, it confirms the sense that I have of myself. I am able to make my life progress in the way that I'm accustomed to it doing. So although it's an endless work which has ups and downs, the fact that I feel myself as the one who is doing it confirms my validity. And this, from the Dharma point of view, is a terrible confirmation, because it confirms the necessity of me acting on the world rather than the world being as it is. So when we see that ignorance is a misreading of what is there, that it's not actually something which makes a fundamental change, it makes a superficial change. Ignorance is a function of interpretation and elaboration when interpretation and elaboration are not necessary. Then we can allow the flow of experience to be continuous. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. For example, last night at the beginning, when we were dancing, there would be one song and then a pause, and everybody standing around looking, what now, and then some new song would come on, and then a little bit of moving again, and then later we had a sequence, and there's just song merging into song, and it's completely different, because you can see that people's bodies are not interrupted, and that flow, this is our life. Here we are, then we have a break, then we're back, then we have lunch, then we say goodbye, then you leave, then you get home, then you sleep, then the week begins on the Monday morning, and then it's Tuesday, on and on and on, this flow of experience. And the central point is, how do we participate in that? Energy is flowing in space. the central point of our understanding and practice is to keep the always already, the givenness of the inseparability of space and movement, so that we don't feel that we have to be the mover, so that the subject is extrapolated, taken out of this undivided field, and then is endlessly having to make choices and make it happen. That everything you do can be within the flow of space, because from the point of view of the Dzogchen view, it always already has been. The way that we see ourselves as an individual agent apart from the world, acting on the world, this is a false interpretation. When you relax that, you won't become stupid. You won't lose the knowledge you have. The knowledge that you have has all come through interaction, through your participation in the world, whether it's reading a book or looking up the computer or talking with someone else. Through your being in the world, moving in dialogue, in relation to others, you're giving out and you're receiving. And this is what education is, this is what cultural development is. It's actually being a linked movement, a pulsation, but our interpretation of it is that we have had to do things and that we have made them happen. So, relaxing the illusion of separation allows the world to continue as before, but in an easier way, without this extra burden. Like maybe you have a big life decision ahead of you. Where will I live? What will I do? What kind of work should I do? What school should I send the kids to? You can have many, many, many thoughts about that. In the end, you have to do something. And the something that you do is the thing that feels right at the time. It just happens. And all the other thoughts, what were they for? So there's a way in which waiting allows the moment to flow through us. And all sorts of thoughts about what and how actually start to freeze the situation and make for grinding, because now there's this and there's that, and this is quite good and that's quite good. So should I do this or should I do that? In the end, you will do something. It's not clear, perhaps when we reflect back on choices we've made in the past, whether these deliberations, these conscious balancings and inquiries have actually made much difference in our choices. Because doors open, and we go through or we don't go through. That's all. So it's about trusting that being part of what is going on, that participation allows you access to intrinsic value. You won't lose value. When you feel apart from things, when you feel separated, the meaning making which is required goes back on your own shoulders. Is this one better than that one? Who knows? You ask 10 people, you get 10 different replies. What should I do with my life? This is an insane question. It's completely insane. As if you've got a life and now you're going to kind of organize it. You breathe in and you breathe out, and circumstances move you in this way and that way. And actually by moving with it, you do rather well. When Cassius Clay was first coming into fame as a boxer, and you could see these films of him on television, and he had such a supple spine, and easy shoulders, and his neck was incredible because his head would move. So you see this big, heavy bruiser putting the punch, and then he's back again. And that that is life, isn't it? Nobody can stop the punch coming, but you can learn to move with it, play with it. And of course, if you move with the punch, you could say, the other person is making me do this, and feel like the victim, because I want to live life on my terms. But actually, this was a very beautiful dance that he did. And it was why so many people came to love him, because he had just the sense, I offer myself into this play of movement, and it brings least damage to myself. So this is from these very ordinary examples that we can see every day in life, gives us maybe the sense to trust that the world is here and to give ourselves to it. And this links to the question of devotion, because for many people faith and devotion is quite difficult. So here we have a shrine, there are statues on the shrine, and the statues are consecrated. That is to say, as when they were almost finished, there's a cavity that's made inside them, a hole, and into this space put mantras and often precious substances. These mantras written on paper in that way, and prayers, they're called Zung, and Zung means to hold. So they hold the blessing or the sight of the life force in the statue. And in the final consecration, the little dots of the eye are put in, so this is now not a symbol of the Buddha who is somewhere else, but this is the actual Buddha. This is like the discussion in the Catholic Church, whether the Mass is the actual body and blood of Christ or whether it's a symbol of it. And many people were killed having the wrong idea about that. Because it's quite a big thing to believe, now we're drinking Christ's blood, we're eating his flesh. Would you really want to do that? Better to have it as a symbol. But of course, if it's a symbol of something, it's something somewhere else, and immediately the energy goes down. The level of participation is reduced because it's being mediated through a distancing. But if you think, this is the actuality, Christ, my Savior, is being incorporated into my body, then the profound transformation occurs, because this is not like anything else in the entire world. This is truly special. In the same way, when we believe that the shrine is the actual presence of the Buddhas, we feel deep devotion and faith. However, you might think, well, but I don't actually feel that way. I've never felt devotion. I don't believe in these things. Well, you believe in apples. You believe in bananas. You believe this is a banana. You approach the banana, you pick it up, you peel off the skin, you put it in your mouth, and with supreme confidence, you eat the banana. You internalize the banana without any fear. You have full faith in the banana-ness of the banana. Now, if you are able to do this, you don't have any problem with faith and belief. The Buddha is the Buddha, the banana is the banana, if you believe. If we were in an airplane that crashed in a jungle, in the Amazon or something, a few of us managed to straggle out. We're shocked and we're a bit hungry. What will we eat? There are all kinds of berries. Will they poison us? Will they heal us? We don't know. But we have confidence in bananas. If we see a banana, thank God there's something to eat. Our anxiety flows away and we are saved. banana salvation. So we have the same with the Buddha. Once you believe in the Buddha, you have Buddha salvation. Everywhere you go, there is the Buddha. What is that like? You know, very often with children, they become, we say, quite fussy. They become a bit sort of anxious around food. They look at it on the plate, and I don't like this. It's good food, look, we're all eating it. And that can make eating a long, long, slow process. It's like some mental construction is going between them and the food on the plate. They can see that other people eat it, and so it's not poisonous. But for me, I'm not sure. Not sureness is not a factor which adds value to life. Not sureness is alienating, it slows things down, it increases a lot of unnecessary mental activity. Which is why in the text it always says faith and devotion is very important, because it's simple, it's straightforward, the object is open, and the more we relate to the open object, the more open we become. And if you stay with your hesitations, you close down the object because you're trying to define it through your concepts. Are you sure this is okay? And that uncertainty feeds into a parallel uncertainty in yourself. So it's almost like you become diminished through your uncertainty about the value of the object. The object is no longer just this free pathway, but becomes a kind of mirror that reflects back to you your own limitation. Which is why when we do this 3R, we make the sound of ah, it's very open. It's like very naked. I'm releasing all my preoccupations. I'm releasing the burden of responsibility that I have to work out whether it's okay or not. I'm trusting that relaxing in space is enough. And then all kind of things come, and they come and they go. When we get lost in the meditation, we find ourselves attributing value. We like something or we don't like something, or we go off in a daydream and then we come back and think, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and so on. And you find yourself in this dualistic, evaluative, judgmental positioning. And you've lost the openness of the meditation. The basis of the practice is relax, release, and allow the flow of life to go on, which is quite an incredible thing to say. I will now allow the flow of existence to continue. Blessings upon you. It's slightly pompous. This is the problem of the ego. It's more than a little inflated. And its inflation separates it all. The flow is here. The flow is here. You just go into it. Like going to the seaside and go in the water, and then your child is on the beach. I don't want to go in the water. I don't want to go in the water. Come in. This kind of hesitancy is not much fun. It's called being a party pooper. You just go into the water and you're in the water. The water welcomes you. So the thing about the separation is that it both diminishes us, it shrinks us, and it inflates us simultaneously. We lose because we are losing the ground of our being, which is participation. And it inflates us because now we're having to have our judgments and our opinions and what we are going to do. And this burden of the self then starts to feel like a validation of my importance, making my decisions, and that then becomes a further barrier to letting go. What will become of me if I let go? Becoming will continue as it always has been, and you will find yourself there. this is our actual situation, which is always that of finding ourselves. Because life has happened before we make sense of it. So you find out what's happening after it's happened. So instead of trying to make sense of it in that way, you can just trust and be in there. And that's really at the heart of the practice. So if we go back into doing the 3R, and very gently you can raise these questions as before, because the central point is to taste and be for yourself the openness of the mind. You yourself are the illuminator, because illumination is all around you, and this is the quality of the mind. It's not the quality of the ego, it's the quality of the mind. And being relaxed and in that openness, clarity arises by itself. So as long as you define yourself and your mind, you're situated in the thought factory which is producing thoughts which define the world. So again and again we relax out of that, open, and whenever there seems to be definitions about this is who I am, this is how I am, just stay relaxed and open with them. They vanish. Who is the one who is aware of their vanishing? Who is the one who is aware of the arising of the next thought? Being aware of is not the same as a witness or an observer. We're not looking across a distance at something else. We're aware of the unspeakable intimacy of the fact that the whole world arises inside us. Everything is our experience, but not as a personal experience, but in the infinity of our awareness, subject and object arise. That is to say, your embodied being, your thoughts, your feelings, your bowels, your feet, all of what you take yourself to be is always already within the field of experience. So when you open as the awareness which reveals the field of experience, you don't vanish. Other people don't vanish. You just see, oh, this is how it works. Manifestation, the energy of the mind, is what I call me, is what I call you. This energy is moving and pulsating all the time within the field of clarity, which is the luminosity of the mirror. It's the brightness of the mirror resting in the emptiness of the mirror, which allows the flow of the reflections. We are in the mirror already. We are the mirror already. So we are both the infinity of awareness, which is empty and has no content. We are this field of experience with all its rich complexity arising and changing moment by moment, beyond computation, beyond any form of calculus. And we are precisely this. I'm me. I'm here in the field. I'm part of the field. So it's not an annihilation of the self. You don't have to give up yourself or destroy yourself. But the self relaxes because it's among friends. Because it's at home in the ground of its being. So nothing about the form of life needs to change. But the basic tension that comes from the anxiety of isolation. Who am I? What will I do? And as part of the world, you find that you're just being this and that, and it tumbles along. So, we do some more of the practice. So, now we have a break, and then we can see if there are any questions arising from the study and practice we've done together. So that you're clear about the view and the practice. Okay? Okay, so see if you have any questions about the view or the practice, or
I have a question. In meditation, when I look for the mind or try to be with the mind, there are sensations, feelings, input from the sense organs.
yeah.
And another aspect of the mind is the one who is looking.
Mm-hmm.
How to balance these two directions in which I could look.
Do you know that there's a looker? Someone looking?
I suppose.
So you have sensations, and somebody is aware of the sensations, and somebody is aware that you are aware of the sensations. So you could have a regression ad infinitum,
Yeah.
like sort of these little Russian dolls. But actually, the watcher, the looker, is an experience. It's not the ground awareness itself. So, when we talk about subject and object, we tend to, in our ordinary life, we think, I am the subject, and I look at these objects out there, and I'm also can be aware of my body as an object, and I can even be aware of my mind as an object, because I can think about my thoughts, I can think about what I did yesterday. So I appear to have a subjectivity which stands in relation to objects. And this subjectivity has the feeling tone of I, me, myself. I am the subject. When we sit in the meditation, we see that the ingredients of the subject, which are thoughts, feelings, sensations, and so on, which are taken as being affirmations or expressions or contents of myself, these are also fleeting. So the watcher or the observer or the judge or the critic, the witness, these are all transient arisings. And they come and they go. So when we are caught in the subject formation, stay with the one who thinks they are a subject. Means not pushing it away, not merging into it, but just allowing it to show itself. So this is why we have the image of the mirror. The mirror is not actively creating something. It's not like a movie projector. It's not pumping something out. It just shows what's there. Whereas the looker has an intention, and the intention is energetic. So we have these two basic aspects. We have stillness and movement. And the movement sometimes looks subject, sometimes looks object. When the mind shows itself, it shows itself as both subject and object. So when you're sitting and you become aware, oh, my mind is very busy today, or I seem to have a lot of thoughts about holidays, or whatever that would be, that position is very tempting, because it feels like me. This feels like my home base. This is who I am, where I am, and so on. If you can just have the sense of that, stay there, and see what happens. All the contents of that moment of subjectivity dissolve and vanish. And something else arises. And the next thing that arises may look object, may look subject. This is why non-duality is difficult for us, because we want to have these two categories, the looker and the looked at, the knower and the known. But both of these are energy formations. They are transient moments of patterning revealed in this translucent openness of the mind. The clarity of the mind is not the subject. So this is why you get this whole debate and difference between a Hindu view that would say the Atman is a manifestation of Brahman and it can dissolve back into it. And some people would say that the Atman is a delusion or an egoic form expressed in ahamkara, like holding on to the sense of a self. But from the point of view of Dzogchen, there isn't a problem except the ignorance of misidentifying a transient pattern formation as being eternal and therefore filling it again and again. So I is an empty signifier. I. In a sense, it's meaningless. You have to say, I am tired, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. I is incredibly useful because you can add almost anything to it. I am a murderer, I am a doctor, I am a this, I am a that. Whatever somebody is able to say, I has no objection. So, in that sense, I is like a kind of shadow form of the mind itself. The mind is open. The mirror has no content. I has no content. I is like a sausage skin. You can put whatever you want into it. You can have pork sausages, lamb sausages, chicken sausages. It's just a skin. And in fact, there is no skin. It's just I. So the empty sign is a kind of simulacrum, a kind of ghostly impersonator of the openness of the mind. Because the openness of the I is its willingness to not just be filled with something, but to claim ownership of what it's filled with. So if I'm thirsty, well, I need a drink. It's a kind of seal which sort of validates the existential truth of this particular proposition. And so the I fills itself with something because it seeks somethingness. But I is just an expression of emptiness. So the true nature of I is empty, but its self-maintenance requires it to keep claiming to be full of something. Because I basically says, take me seriously. Take me seriously. So if I say I'm cold, put the heating on. Come on, I'm cold. You know, it's the positioning of the I as it adopts this particular content serves to separate it from what's around and make a demand. If I'm hungry, you should feed me. If I'm tired, I should have a place to sleep. So it's a positioning in the environment. So what we call the watcher usually carries the sense of I am watching. There's a self-reflexive turn in subjectivity. That the subject is not just aware of the object, but in the very moment of observing the object is affirming its own existence to itself. So when these two formations are arising, this is the continuing interaction of subject and object. So we have to be very suspicious about the claim of subjectivity. So being present with the subject allows the subject to show its emptiness, which allows us to relax the need to give truth to the subject. So one way of describing it we've used before is to say the subject as I, me, myself is like the moon. awareness, the natural light of the mind, is like the sun. The moon has no light of its own. The moon shows a light and is bright. It's undeniable. The full moon is bright. The illuminating power of the eye is not its own light, and yet it illuminates. But it's in denial of the light, because when usually, and sometimes you see them together, the sun and the moon in the sky, but usually the moon is up in disguise invisible. So the invisible sun is feeding the light of the moon, which generates the illusion that the moon has its own light. The light of the mind manifests as energy, display, showing, and one aspect of that in the non-dual field is the subject. But the subject has no light of its own, but it's bright, but it's not its own brightness. And that's what we see again and again by relaxing and opening, and without merging or pushing away, offer hospitality to what arises, whether it looks object or subject. We're just there, and both these forms will change and move and go. And then we see these are patterns in the flow. The flow continues. These patterns, if you grasp them, appear to be something, and when you don't grasp them, they're self-releasing, self-liberating. So that would be the thing to do. But as soon as we are identified as a watcher or a knower or a looker, it's difficult. And that's why this practice of looking for the mind is difficult. Because in a sense it acts into the paradigm of ignorance. I am going to try to find my mind. And I think it's very difficult in language to describe what you have to do. Because in a sense you're stepping out of the frame which is installed by the use of language. I am going to the market, I am going to the kitchen, I am going to sleep. We're used to formations that say there is an agent or an active doer or maker who is going to operate on the field of experience. And you operate on the field because you're not part of the field. The potter puts her hands onto the clay and makes a pot. There is the clay, the object. There is the potter with hands and training, and she engages with the clay, and that gives rise to the pot. So I am going to make a pot. I am going to look for my mind. You start off with completely the wrong orientation. So this is why we breathe out, or we relax into the ah, and we're available. We're not doing or making. So we're wanting to move out of the sense of I have to make it happen. I am going to do it. We're moving into passive, receptive openness. The mirror just shows what's there. The mirror doesn't have a menu or an agenda or a selective bias. Often the mind is compared to a crystal ball, because a ball has no corners or edges. You can't say what is the top and what is the bottom. You can't get a handle on a ball. It's got no place to begin or end. It is just a hole. So we relax into that wholeness, and life goes on. Sometimes looks object, sometimes looks subject. Not identifying with the subject or the object, there is the unimpeded flow of the potential of the situation. And then you get up from the meditation as the subject, but the subject moving in the non-dual field. This is the most important thing. We don't come out of the meditation. The meditation, and this is one of the reasons we often do it with the eyes open, we are in this field and we're still, and then we're moving in the field which we already have seen is just the unfolding of shimmering possibility. And by our gesture, we evoke particular patterns within that field, sometimes responding, sometimes shaping, but it's all vanishing in that very moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. Oh.
At the beginning of this explanation, you used the word ground awareness. Is that a function of the mind, or is it the mind? This is something which I think I always get confused. It's just a linguistic.
Okay. Yeah. So the word ground is used a lot in Dzogchen. And the ground has two aspects. It's both the ground on which everything falls, so it's like the receptor, but it's also the source. So it means the basis, and it's inseparable from space. So it's not it's not a ground from which things grow. So you plant a seed in the ground and the plant comes up. The ground is not just three-dimensional, but an infinitely dimensional openness within which everything can move in its different directions. So ground there means the basis or the the guarantor of the possibility of experience. The space of the mind and the clarity of the mind are born together, and without that you wouldn't have anything. So it's the basis that if that's not there, then there's nothing at all, nihilistic, nothing, nothing, nothing. But this spacious clarity is then the ground of everything which appears as something. But it's not anything in itself.
But it's not, is it the same thing as the mind?
It is the mind,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Well, in Tibetan they have all kind of things to say about this. For example, we say yin, rig, yerme. Yerme means inseparable. Yin means short for Chuki Yin, the Dharma Dhatu. And the Dharma Dhatu means the space in which all dharmas arise. So everything in this room, everything outside, the clouds, the sun, the moon, everything, these are all dharmas or phenomena. As we've seen in the Heart Sutra, they're empty. So the Dharma Dhatu is the space or the extension, well, it's not extension, it's problematic because it's a very dualistic, but it is the, if you like, the field, the hospitality within which everything arises, and this is inseparable from awareness. So awareness is pervasive. So awareness is not like a torch going, sending a ray of light out from here to there.
That would be mindfulness.
That would be mindfulness. However, of course, in the Dzogchen tradition they say, but Rigpa is like the sun. So it is illuminating. Because everything you say is going to illuminate some aspects and not other aspects. The main thing is to see that all these Dharma descriptions are a kind of massage. That we have these rigidities and tight muscles which lead to repetitive actions. And the different terms go into the knotted muscle and loosen us up. Because the linguistic description is never going to completely give a clear account. Now I know what it is. Because it's not a what that we could know. So it's really beyond language, but we have to use language, and so we have to use it with humility and a sensitivity as gestural rather than as definitive. Yeah.
I want to ask about the active aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that in the passive aspect, we do in the meditation, just letting things, it's kind of not so hard to go to this openness. But as soon as I personally go up and do something, there's always a notion of I do something.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go for a coffee, I go for a coffee because I want to go have a coffee. There's not that I had the feeling that the field gives me a coffee.
Why do you want to go for a coffee?
Yeah, that's the question.
Presumably some
who's-
kind of
who's-
thirst or some habit arises in you.
Yeah, it's
It wasn't there,
yeah,
then it is there,
yeah,
and because it's a coffee break, you get up and do it. If you're sitting in the middle of our session and the thought arises, then you sit and think, oh, I'll have that later.
yeah,
So a thought as a potential
yeah.
can be activated or not. The moment you activate it or you allow it to come, it is as if you are the one doing it. You look like the master. I am going to have a cup of coffee. But you are the servant of the thought. I want a coffee.
But
You didn't order the thought. You order the coffee, but you don't order the thought that tells you to order the coffee.
But who's the one who allows the thought to be activated?
Another thought. Another thought. Because if you're in the middle of the session, you might think, well, I'd like to have a coffee, but I better not because I'll disturb people and da-da-da. So other thoughts come in as a policeman to say to that thought, shh,
Yeah.
not yet, later. Okay. Thoughts, it's a shared field. It's like a playground, isn't it? And some of the boys want to play football and other people are doing something else and they say, give us a space, we need football. Oh no, fuck off, we're doing this game. You can play football after. Well, that's what the thoughts are doing. The space of the mind is a bit rough. So you can watch. Now I'm having a cup of coffee. This is a bit like the witnessing. This is the commentarial self. The narrative self. We establish the continuity of our individual identity by running a storyline. Now I'm having a cup of coffee. I like this coffee. I don't like this coffee. When I get back home, there's a cafe near me. They have much better coffee or whatever. So this comparing and contrasting, in a sense, it's a script which allows the enunciation of statements which appear to be talking about something out there, but their primary focus is that self-reflexive movement in which you subtly validate yourself as I. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our mental activity is the confirmation that the nexus of thoughts that is currently forming I is inherently valid. So the I is a usurper. It's staging a palace coup all the time. The real king is awareness, but in the middle of the night, this bastard son arrives and sits on the throne. I'm having coffee. And then it goes, I must have coffee. Now I need a pee. I must have a pee. Now I have a coffee, a pee, a coffee. The king of everything. We are truly crazy. Yeah.
James, a little stupid question, but we need a certain way our identity in the normal psychological and normal life. You need, if you don't have your identity, you have perhaps two, like schizophrenia. So
Yeah, yes.
what our real identity is awareness, but the one who is not aware
Yeah,
has normal ego,
yeah,
and he must have identity.
that's true. That's correct. Nobody's saying you should forget who you are. You need, but it's to realize that what you take as your ordinary identity is like a part in a theater. In the great theater of the arising empty sphere of shared experience, due to causes and conditions, you have particular roles, and with these roles come particular scripts, and through the enunciation of the script, you establish your identity.
Like a theater director.
Yeah, not the director. No, we don't know who the director is. The director is usually karma, which is organizing the particular choices that we take. And so we find ourselves telling other people who we are, inviting them to confirm the relative validity of our script. But if you didn't know where you lived, or you didn't know what your shoes were when you went out of the room, it would be very difficult. But your shoes don't establish anything. They're just a function. Thoughts are a function. They are communication. This is why we say that energy is in the house of compassion. Stillness, the openness of the mind, is the house of wisdom. If you want wisdom, you relax into the unborn openness. Out of the unborn openness, all kinds of movements, some look subject, some look object, occur, and that is compassion or communication or relatedness. So knowing where you live, knowing where you go to buy your milk, all of these things are patterns of communication. But they don't establish anything, because communication is gestural.
I've got one question on the view and one on the practice. On the view, it's like this. You said yeshe in the Heart Sutra. And perhaps I understood it wrong, but you said yeshe means Rigpa is free of emptiness. Or perhaps I wrote it.
Means emptiness is free of Rigpa.
Emptiness is free of Rigpa.
Yeah. Although they are inseparable. Because in emptiness you won't find anything. The empty side is nothing. But the empty side is also full. Because it's empty, it's full. And one of the things it's full of is awareness. But it's only full of awareness because it's empty. So the glass can only be filled with water because it's a glass. If I decide I don't like this water and I'm going to pour it into the plastic container, I will get a mess of my trousers because the top is on the container. The top is closed, so it can't be added to. The mind as emptiness is open, and so it's always full. So emptiness and fullness are co-emergent. So primordial purity and Hlundrup are not two different things. Empty, full, full, empty, empty, full, full, empty.
Okay, and then perhaps the practice question is relating to this. Perhaps my biggest fear is if I let go everything, like you said always, let it go, let it go, let it go. How do I know how to drive a motor car? How do I know how to drive a motor car? That is to say, if I let it go, everything.
The Buddha said, there are in the basic teaching of the 10 faults, there are 4 of the body, 3 of the body, 4 of speech, and 3 of the mind. And one of the faults of mind is wrong views. And wrong views are established as nihilism, saying there's nothing at all, there is no consequence to action, and the other is eternalism. Now you have created a perfect marriage between these two oppositions. Because you say, if I let go, I will have eternal nihilism. If in the meditation I relax my mind, I will not remember anything ever again. Complete annihilation. Permanent annihilation.
That's the fear.
It's a fear. And how long does the fear last?
Last 5 years at least.
But this is very good. This is very good. You only gain the fear by coming here.
Yeah.
So that means it is not a self-existing fear. It has arisen due to causes and conditions. So, when you go home, the first thing you do, fill the bath with some foamy, nice soap. And you take up your 3 favorite ducks, Om Ahum, and you float them through the foam. No fear, no anxiety. Life is better. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take it too seriously. It's a, how could I possibly lose everything? Only if I have everything because I'm holding it together. So your fear is actually the loss of omnipotence. And the burden of it's all up to me. If I didn't do it, nothing would happen. Now that's true of certain things, projects you have at work and so on, that will not fall out of the sky by themselves. But our capacities to speak a language, to walk, to drive a car, arise according to situations and vanish. But they come back again because they are situationally evoked. And the Buddha said everything is dependent origination. So when you get in your car, you put the hands on the wheel. When you're sitting here, we do this, we don't do this. Wrong place, wrong time. When you get in the car, you don't do this. Unless the police stop you. So this is the trust. We couldn't proceed, otherwise you couldn't fall asleep at night. Thinking, oh God, maybe I don't wake up in the morning. Stay awake all night. Oh, good night. Good morning. Oh, here I am again. So you do the meditation. Oh. The releasing, what the releasing is doing, it's like if you have a Lego set and you build a ship. This is a lovely ship. I enjoyed making the ship. Now I have a ship. I'm getting bored looking at the ship that I enjoyed making. Now I want to make an aeroplane. How can I make an aeroplane when I've used up all my bits of Lego? That's a problem. Oh! So this is our issue. When our mind has got fixated into these patterns, we tend to do more of the same and do more of the same, which goes back to the identification. So, over-identification on a limited set of patterns hides our potential from us. Because we feel, if I didn't do this repeatedly, I wouldn't be me. But actually we could do a lot more things. We can probably have more humor in our life, more playfulness, more creativity. If we relax a bit, if we trust, if we let our anxiety go a bit. So when our energy is tied into holding things together, fear of being criticized by others, fear of being shamed, and so on, these become the organizing factors for a very restricted slice of this great potential that all of us have. So when we're relaxing, we're relaxing out of fixation on our current pattern. And in space, we see all kind of strange things arise in the mind when we meditate. Good, bad, right, wrong. And again, we're not merging, not identifying, not rejecting. So the usual work of construction, taking what we like and getting rid of what we don't like, we're not indulging that. And then, there's more potential. Because when we say, this is a bad thought, or I don't want this thought, that judgment is arising from our previous experiences in life. Maybe messages from our parents, or things we got at school, or the historical background of Germany, or whatever it would be. Certain factors have said, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. But it's already there. It's already in the mind. So if you push it away, you're acting after the fact, because I shouldn't have it. And this is where you get the real difficulty in the meditation, because it's only by having the courage to allow the mind to be as it is that you see the natural liberation of thoughts going free by themselves. So this terrible thought, this shameful thought that you don't want anyone to know about, has now gone. And if you don't think about it and think, oh my God, how could I be like that? It's completely gone. Your own worry, I shouldn't have thoughts like that, acts as a kind of glue that massages a trace, like a snail's track, onto your mind, so you're more likely to have a repetition. So by allowing whatever comes to come, whatever goes to go, you open more and more freedom of the mind, and then when you get up from the meditation cushion, you come into an environment, and that environment will evoke responses. Now, if you have more freedom, you can respond in different ways. But certain things will still be entrained. Because you have complete liberated freedom doesn't mean you put the toothpaste on the toothbrush and the toothbrush in your ear. I will decide where I put the toothbrush. Toothbrush goes in the mouth, the car keys go in the car key, the house keys go in the house door. Why would they go anywhere else? Because they are fitting. Some things just fit, and other things don't. You don't put cheese in your coffee. But you might explore talking in a slightly different way, or decide you're going to go to dance classes, or take up golf, or speak more sweetly to your mum, or whatever it would be. You would suddenly realize, oh, I'm locked in a pattern, and I don't have to be. This is just a construct. So I don't think there would be any loss at all. And I think you need to look at that again and again and think, oh, how much tension I'm carrying in this fear of getting things wrong. So freedom comes from knowing I make mistakes. And mistakes are normal. And nobody has been alive ever who didn't make a mistake. And even if you feel that what you did was not a mistake, other people are quite entitled to say, you made a mistake. Yeah? When Buddha Shakyamuni left his house to go, well, when he was Prince Siddhartha, when he left his house to go to seek enlightenment, we say this was a wonderful thing. Mother-in-law didn't agree, wife didn't agree. They said, you bastard. He's gone. If he comes back here, I'm going to give him a piece of... It's like that. People have different opinions. So part of our freedom is recognizing opinions have the truth status of opinion, not truth. So if somebody likes you or doesn't like what you've done, that's their mental formation. It's not nothing at all, but it's not the whole truth. So that's again the middle way that allows us to be more flexible. We can apologize, we can say, I'll write the document again, I'm sorry you don't like it. But we don't have to feel crushed or annihilated or broken because we've done something wrong. And in that way, the flexibility of the spine increases so that we become like seaweed, just moving with the rhythm of life. And a lot of us have a lot of fear embedded in the body and thought patterns because of this anxiety about being told off, that someone will wag the finger. And so the witness and the judge merge together. So if I see, then I'll see the mistake. We don't see with a benign eye, a comforting eye that sees the process why things arose the way they did. And therefore we could do it differently, which would be a helpful gaze. We see it with a harsh gaze. So again and again, we're reviewing these different aspects. The openness of the mind, how we are in relation to the general field, but also the content. Is it valid? Is it true? Do we have to? Do we have to do this? I worked for a while in a hospital setting at a time when HIV was spreading, and I got involved in doing some training in specialist units, and I would often go off, and it was part of my job because it was a specialist drug unit that I was in.
What is HIV? What is HIV?
AIDS.
AIDS.
Yeah. And my manager said to me, I'm not happy that you keep going off. And I said, I don't know, it says in my description that I have to keep you happy. He became really, really angry. He said, you don't understand, I am the manager. I thought, you're a fucking idiot. And so shortly after, I went and found another job. Because it's like that. You know, what planet are you on? You want to tell me what to do? You think I'm a monkey? You think I'm a puppet? Yeah, get alive. And that's what we need. People quack, 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 all kind of shit, smear all over you. Wankers. So this is the positive use of hatred. Projectile vomiting. Because really, when we're talking about passive receptive, this is opening on a meditation cushion. It's not a recommendation for daily life. You know, people are full of shit. Everybody has the 5 poisons. You know, no matter how nice they are and they wear a suit and a tie and they get a fancy title, they're still full of shit. So you have to keep your eyes open. And meditation practice should not make you fall asleep and put up with nonsense. It's about flexibility. So that would be, I think, the way into approaching it. Yeah.
Now, something about the autumn.
Yeah.
In the autumn, on the first day, it says we're going to take the Bodhisattva vow. How do we know we're ready for this? It seems like a big thing.
You're never ready to take the Bodhisattva vow. The Bodhisattva vow is an act of madness, isn't it? To say, I will save all sentient beings. How could you be ready to do that?
So, but in what spirit are we going to... I mean, I recite these things. I have recited them before many times, but it just seems like such an emphasis that this is a preparation for that. So in what spirit am I taking it that way?
As an aspiration. And actually, the paradoxical thing is, it's easier to save all sentient beings than to save one person. Because when you encounter one particular individual, wow, there's real problems. This is what therapy is all about. Someone's sitting in a seat opposite you and you're thinking, bloody hell. But all sentient beings. That's the easy bit. So that would be the spirit. Well, I mean, there's all sorts of ways into it. One is thinking, we've all been born many, many times before, and in these lifetimes we've had family situations, we've had parents, our mothers have done good things, feeding us, clothing us, training us in various ways, whether we're birds or cows or whatever. And so we have already a connection to all beings, and the form of the connection is a debt of gratitude. So we take the Bodhisattva vow from the point of view of repaying our debts. We're already bonded. We're not stepping across to unknown people. Everyone you meet, you already have an intimate connection with. Now that's a very profound thing, because that's already saying there are no strangers. There are no isolated entities here or there. Whatever form their bodies are in now, these are all minds who have a potential for compassion, and that compassion has been shown to me, so why would I not show compassion to them? So if I focus on gaining enlightenment for myself, and I'm forgetful of others, not only would this be a crime against compassion, but it would be a crime against wisdom, because how we awaken is we awaken into the whole which is shared with all beings. So it would be a contradiction ontologically and ethically to go for an individual liberation. So you can set it up as something very big, but as I was suggesting earlier, we're always going to make mistakes, and we're going to be self-forgetful, and we're going to be selfish. So if we think, I can only say this when I have dealt with all these obscurations, we would never begin. So it's saying, given my limitations, given my habitual formations, I'm going to open out in this way. And sometimes it will go wrong, but we can do, if you're operating in that dualistic way, you can do confession and you can reaffirm the vows and so on.
Coming back to your manager, didn't you give up on him?
Didn't I give up on him? Yes, of course.
Yeah, so
I'm very glad. I gave up on him as a manager, not as a sentient being. You know, I wish him well, but I wish him far away from me. And this is the thing. This is the thing about the mind. The mind is so big; it includes everyone, and therefore, stepping back from situations which don't function for you is not abandoning. We abandon people when inside ourselves we say, "Fuck off! I hate you. I hope you're dead." That is annihilatory hatred. But the aversive or push, which opens up a space, is often very, very healing, because there's nothing to be done. If you lock horns with someone and you can't find a way out of it, better to separate. You know, if couples fight a lot, they need to learn that they can say a word and one of them gets up and walks around the block and so on, because when you're in it, you can't solve it. The mind has closed down. So recognizing in our life that some work situations or family or relationship situations don't work circumstantially, you can separate. And sometimes you have to separate by going somewhere else. Sometimes you separate by having a bit of a break or talking about it to a third party. But the danger is, it's all up to me, I've got to do it. It's really important to have allies. And this, I think, is the notion of our being embedded in a field of energy. Making use of other people is incredibly important. Nobody is self-sufficient. So we are all reliant on others to make the clothes we wear, make the food we eat, help us to change our mood, and so on. And so working with the environment, collaborating with circumstances will be important. And sometimes we know this is a dead end. I thought it was a road, but I'm not getting any more traction here, because we realize that the structure of this person's mind and mind don't have a basis for real collaboration. And in Tibetan they talk about people having a connection, a tenjung, established from a previous life, and that opens up ways of being. And if you don't have a connection and you're having to do it artificially, it will be very difficult and it's probably not going to work out. Also, there is the issue of karma, that whatever arises, according to the tradition, is the fruit of past actions. Some of these fruits last a long time and some a short time. So you get people who meet when they're 16, they fall in love and they're together till they die. You get other people who meet at a party, go off together and fuck, and in the morning think, what am I doing here? You know, there's all sorts of ways that people relate in life. And none of us can really know how long something will last. I was amazed in the work that I was doing when I would have couples in their 70s coming to talk about their divorce. You know, you've raised your kids, you've got grandkids, why are you divorcing now? I can't bear him anymore. You put up with him for 40 years, you know. But it's like that. There was a bubble in which this was tolerable, this was workable. And then, due to causes and circumstances, many of them, we would believe karmic, suddenly that bubble pops in the person's thinking, I don't want this anymore. I don't care what happens. I don't want this. I can't have this. And that's such an interesting thing. Because again, this is after the fact. It's not that somebody chose this, but they found themselves like a beached whale suddenly out of the ocean they had been swimming in another territory. I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. But why? We could go on holiday. We could do this. I can't. Don't ask me. I can't. Oof. This is very, very important for us to recognize that the urge to mastery, the sense that I am in charge of my life, that I make my life the way I want it to be, sometimes is the key way to organize things. And sometimes it just happens. It doesn't mean that we're just a leaf in the wind blown hither and thither. It means at certain moments we have agency, we can help to make things happen, and at other moments we are just blown. And if you apply agency when it's time to let the wind blow you, you just struggle and it doesn't get any better. I don't know if it happens in Germany, but almost every week in Britain you can read these accounts of a man whose partner has said she's leaving and taking the kids, and he kills the kids, he kills her, and then he kills himself. You think, fuck, how could you do that? If I can't have you, no one will have you. There you see, there's no exit. There's no way to release and relax and imagine another life. So, knowing that the door is open makes life safer a lot of the time. Trapped spaces bring a lot of pain. It doesn't mean that you should have no walls in the house and anything can happen, but it's the balance between working to establish structures and maintaining them, and recognize that all structures have a sell-by date, because even if you have a happy family, the kids grow up and they leave home. At one time, you as the mum were the center of attention, and every 2 seconds, mom, 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 mom. And now they've closed the bedroom. Don't come in here. This is my room. You stay out. I'm in here with my boyfriend. Don't come in. Well, okay. Irrelevant. What are we having for food after? So in that way, all situations are reorganized by the changing factors of life. Any other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
When we are listening to a dharma teaching, like right now, are we listening to the creativity of our own mind?
Yes. I am your karma, you are my karma. Our parents are our karma. Everything we get is our share. Whether it's going to the Catholic Church or coming here, going to the casino, this is how our mind presents itself. So each of us live in our world, which has crossovers to a certain extent with other people's worlds. But this situation is your mind. This is how your mind is showing itself to you. And that's the same for each of us. So, because I'm in this position where I'm showing things, I'm doing quite a lot of talking, and you're in a more listening kind of mode. When we move out of here, that changes. So this is our position. Sometimes we're receptive, sometimes we're more active, sometimes we're like the subject, sometimes we're like the object. But that these movements between these positions is all the creativity of the mind. Okay, let's do a final meditation. So we do the 3-hour practice, and then at the end we move into the dedication of merit. So now we dedicate the merit to all beings in all the different realms of samsara. You can imagine rays of light spreading out from your heart, connecting you to all beings. In this turbulent world that we live in, we are very lucky to have had a bit of time together to pay attention to the dharma. Most people are preoccupied by other things, wars, famines, ecological disasters, family crises, and so on. These preoccupations, when you have them, when you're in them, seem completely important. And yet time goes by and there's no space for depth or clarity. So taking the time to make a space to look at oneself is a fortunate circumstance, it's a blessing, and it's also hopefully something that allows us to connect with other people in different ways. We don't know how Dharma will spread in the West, whether it will or not. It can proceed in very subtle ways. We don't have to engage in formal Dharma teaching to help people, and for many people that wouldn't be what they'd be wanting at all. But, if you go for a walk with a friend, just drawing attention to the changes according to the seasons, reflecting about changes in the family and so on, allows people to have a more open approach to the dynamic nature of life. And I think that allows more courage and capacity to deal with all the difficulties of life, rather than having to hold it all together. So, in whatever way we can, we just relate to others in a way that brings some kind of softening and some release and more capacity to laugh at ourselves and not take things so seriously. Life is serious when it's all up to us, and we have to make sense of it. And when we rest back in the womb of the Great Mother, when we realize our inseparability from emptiness, it's not so serious at all. So, it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you to our hosts in Kamalashila, to the two lovely monks who are so tolerant of whatever it is we're up to. And to Catherine and Tobias for all the work that they do in the background, to Katja and so on, the team that make everything flow here very well, and the cook. And of course, it's one of the great blessings is to be present and invisible. And certainly is my experience in Kamalashila. The team who do the work and the whole ambience is made very smooth for us by this availability and invisibility at the same time. And I think that's a very beautiful flavor that we can take into our own lives as well. That you can be very helpful without kind of cranking it up and making a profit on it or drawing attention to it. This is very sweet. Thank you to Eva for your work in organizing and for the morning, and to Jayachita for the movement, and for Waldmar and John for the recording and making that available.
And Aina for the video.
And find the video, exactly. And to all of us for the quality of participation. It's very sweet to be here. People collaborate very well. And then we have to think, how is it possible that there is such easy collaboration in the way the party ran last night? Very tolerant, very easy, people taking space, stepping back. This gives us a flavor that maybe we can have more and more of in our lives.
And thank you, James, for your precious teaching.
So now we do a little bit of tidying up in here, and then food, and then goodbye.